Hello everybody and welcome to Langer's Legion. I'm Langer and let's talk Star Wars Legion. And today, let's talk Tempest Force. Hello everybody, Happy New Year, Happy 2024. Hope you had a great holiday season and welcome to the first Langer's Legion video of 2024. And like I said, we're going to talk about Tempest Force, and more specifically, I'm going to give a couple list ideas that I've been kicking around and playing on the tabletop to maybe inspire you or take a look at to see how you might bring Tempest Force to the tabletop near you. So before we dive into the lists, I thought we would start with some of the quick rules of this battle force because there are some limits to it and how it plays. So the first thing to think about for the battle force rules specifically are all vehicles in the battle force do get Scout 2, so that means the ATSTs as well as the speeder bikes. Units that are not within friendly commander range and don't have a comms upgrade equipped can't remove a suppression token at the end of the round. So this is kind of a very interesting kind of panic / suppression mechanic that this battle force has. So if you're outside of range 3 and you don't have a comms upgrade, you can't remove a suppression token. If you're within range 3, you don't need to have a comms upgrade and you can remove the suppression token. I only stress that because I've been caught with some clarification on that rule where I was assigning all units comms just to make sure. I thought you had to have both, right? Meaning be within range 3 and have the comms upgrade, which is not the case. Thank you to one of my YouTube followers or subscribers that posted that in the chat that corrected me, as well as the link to AMG's forum site. And then finally, Tempest Force, almost said Blizzard Force. Tempest Force actually has a kind of like rapid reinforcements light mechanic to it, where you can hold any one special forces or one support unit in reserve to drop on the tabletop, just like you would with rapid reinforcement. So you set that table on the side. If you pull that token and that's the last unit, whether it be a support or special forces you can deploy, you then put it on the tabletop outside of range 2 of any enemy opponent. So that's kind of an interesting mechanic for this list. For the actual unit types themselves, this battle force is pretty restrictive. For your commander, you can use the Imperial Officer, or Ruthie as I like to call her, but you can have up to 2, so you can do 1 to 2 commanders with Ruthie. You can do Special Forces, the Scout units, but you can't do Strike Teams, so this has to be full squads of Scout Troopers, and you are required to carry at least 2, but special to this command force, you can take up to 6, which is pretty cool. For core, it's only Stormtroopers, and you have to have 1 unit of Stormtroopers in the battle force. Support, you can take up to 3, but no requirement to take any. Only with the speeder bikes as an option here. And then unique to this battle force, you can take 3 heavy units. You can take the Major Marquand, which is a special print-to-play card for this battle force, or you can take just the regular ATST, but regardless, you can get 3 of those on the tabletop, which we will discuss in one of our lists, kind of a spoiler alert here. And then as far as unique upgrades allowed, there's none here to be aware of. Now, this battle force, like I said, is print to play, so if you aren't familiar with it, you can just go to AMG's website. I'll put the link below, where you can print out the command cards. There are 3 Tempest Force specific command cards, as well as 3 Major Marquand specific command cards, and there's a 1 pip, a 2 pip, and a 3 pip of each that you'll be able to use to make your command card handout, of which of course you're going to see in these lists. But speaking of the list, let's get into what we're actually here to talk about. And for the first list, I went with a kind of a gunline, which kind of goes against the grain a little bit with this battle force, because I'm not using Major Marquand whatsoever in this list. I'm using Ruthie, the Imperial Officer, as my commander. I've equipped her with Inspiring Presence and Electro Binoculars. Electro Binoculars to take her up to Spotter 2, and the Inspiring Presence to kind of help with that, like we talked about before, that suppression mechanic and kind of removing those tokens from the tabletop. For the core, I've got 3 units of stormtroopers. I have 1 unit with just an HH-12, bringing that impact 3. And then I've got 2 units with the DLT-19 and the stormtrooper specialist, using that specialist to give out aims or surge tokens, but usually it's, well, at least for me, it's always aims. And then, like I said, the DLTs are bringing some impact as well. And then kind of the heavy hitters in this list, I've got 4 units of the scout troopers equipped with the sniper rifle. And this allows me to be kind of deadly at that range 5 distance with this squad, because with the sniper rifle, I've got high velocity and pierce. So hopefully you're taking a unit off the table or causing 1 wound with those 2 black dice every time you're rolling them. But also as you move closer, because the regular scout unit only has a range 2, I'm going to do a lot of split firing, right? So maybe the range 2 units shoot 1 enemy unit, and then you use the sniper to shoot at another one, because you have to use high velocity, it has to be the only weapon in the dice pool. So you're going to be doing some split fire there. But that's where kind of the heavy hitters, like I said, is going to come from this list with those 4 scout trooper units. And then I do have 3 speeder bikes. Speeder bikes, to me, are just great units in any Empire list. For their point cost, they punch very well for the 70 points that they cost. Throwing a double rainbow, granted full health, double rainbow, impact 2. And of course, they're really fast, right? They move speed 3, as well as they get that free compulse, right? So what you're going to see in Bombing Run or Breakthrough, they can quickly move across the table. That brings this list to a total of 11 activations and 799 points. So maybe with the 1 point you might get the bid, but mileage may vary on that one. But let's get into the actual command cards and the battle plans. Command cards are ambush, drive them out, push, pin down, and coordinated fire, and of course standing orders. The pin down helps with the bikes to take order tokens off the field for your opponent. I'm using coordinated fire with those stormtrooper units. Basically, every time they use an aim, they give an aim to another unit. So I'm going to be trying to just hand out lots of aims between them and the spotter 2 from Ruthie, hopefully more than likely going to those scout teams with those sniper rifles. For the objectives, we've got bombing run, breakthrough, key positions, and payload. Like I talked about when discussing the bikes, with bombing run, put the bombs in there and try to scoot them across the table as fast as you can. Breakthrough is a good one, again, with the bikes, as well as the fact that compared to the other lists, I've got 11 activations, at least the other list for Tempest Force, so you might potentially have the numbers against an opponent. So for key positions and payload, as well as breakthrough, you're going to hopefully keep your units on the table, keep them massed together, and kind of push towards those objectives. Deployment, major offensive, long march, advanced positions, and rollout. Rollout's going to help with the scout mechanic for the bikes. Long march, again, with those sniper squads, again, depending on what objective you're playing, you're going to be able to sit back at that range 5 and maybe potentially just kind of plunk some units off the table before you start moving in. And for the conditions, supply drop, fortified positions, clear positions, and rapid reinforcements. Like I talked about in the intro, or the rules for this battle force, with that rapid reinforcements, you could be setting aside 3 units. You could set aside 3 units of the scouts, or you could set aside the bikes, or a bike. So you've got some options there. Again, very dependent on what the deployment and the objective is, but it's just something else that your opponent is going to have to think about, because with that rapid reinforcements, again, you're going to drop those units on the table as close as range 2, which is great for the scouts, right? Because that means you can really hit with the full force of the full unit with that range 2, 2 black dice per unit. So that's kind of what I did for the conditions for this gun line. For the next list, or the second list, we're making use of the ATSTs and the Major Marquand. So this is kind of a double heavy list. We got Major Marquand being our commander. He does have the field commander keyword. So he is, for the rest of these lists, he's going to be the commanding unit. But with the ATST, I've got the Hammers pilot, the twin laser cannons, as well as LTA, because Major Marquand comes with direct vehicle, so that's going to give a little bit of order control. And so I'm always going to try and keep that other ATST within range, as long as possible, with Major Mark 1 to give out that extra aim via LTA and that direct. From there, Stormtroopers, 2 of those with the DLT-19 as well as the Astromechs. The Astromechs is all about helping keep the Major as well as the other ATST on the table, so that's going to give you 4 wounds that you can repair to bring that kind of armor total or that wound total to 26 between the 2 ATSTs. So, hopefully your white defense dice hold out pretty well, but that's a lot of wounds for or a lot of crits really that your opponent's got to get through that armor to take those units off the table. And then I've got 3 units of Scout Troopers, again, similar to what you saw before with the sniper and the targeting scopes. I won't get into that because the same methodology or kind of idea applies with those units. This list comes in at 8 activations and 800 points. And really, as you're going to see from the command cards, we're going to really kind of lean into that vehicle aspect with the Major Mark 1 and the Tempest Force command cards. So you've got Gunner Infantry, Drive Them Out, Pin Down, Squadron on Me, Constant Alert, Assault, and of course, Standing Orders. And all these cards are about either giving aims and suppressive keywords to the Major, getting some free moves to the other ATST with like a free pivot and a free speed 1, or I'm giving aims and standbys to any unit with constantly alert, right? So again, with those scouts, if somebody's within range 1, they get a free aim, or within range 2, they're going to get a standby. So just maybe a way that potentially you might get some double attacks, right? Because standby doesn't count as an action, right? So if you trigger the standby before they activate, maybe you can throw out some additional dice. From the objectives, going to look very familiar. Bombing Run, Breakthrough, Key Positions, and Payload. Again, with Bombing Run and Breakthrough, I'm just trying to maximize the armor that I've got for the 2 ATSTs as well as the Astromechs, clearing off some of those wounds. Deployment, Danger Close, Long March, Advanced Positions, and Rollout. Rollout, again, for that additional scout. So now you're looking at Scout 3 to move those ATSTs forward. Conditions, Supply Drop, Fortified Positions, Clear Conditions, and Hostile Environment. Supply Drop is kind of fun. It's hard to, is it even for both opponents, right? Because you're getting some extra cards, but if you can pull some Bactas or some Arc Welders, you help keep your units on the table. That's always good. Fortified Positions, just more cover for the Storms and the Scouts. In Hostile Environment, maybe if you're going up against a rebel list, or even another Empire list potentially, and you're using the suppressive command card with the Major, maybe you can get up to some, panic / suppression shenanigans with Hostile Environment. For the next list, this one just uses 1 ATST. Basically, we're using the Major as the commander and then building everything around him. We do have 1 Stormtrooper unit with an Astromech. Again, the 1 Stormtrooper unit is required. And again, the Astromech just there to keep the Major on the table, give him 2 more wounds, because, armor's great, but if your white defense dice are cold, you can melt 1 ATST pretty quick, and then you can potentially lose half your command cards, right, if the Major's off the table. With the Scout Troopers, I did something a little different here compared to the other 2 lists. I gave them duck and cover as well as prepared supplies. So there's no snipers in these, but I've got 4 scouts, trying to maximize the low profile keyword, giving them with the duck and cover. So if they take an extra suppression, maybe if they get caught out in the open, you can increase their cover, as well as the prepared supplies basically gives them a dodge in the bank, right? Because I'm going to hold that on the card, and maybe that comes into play to keep these guys on the table, because these are really, in this list, are my hands. The 1 Stormtrooper unit as well as the Scout units are my hands if I got to do some sort of claim or repair type objectives. So just trying to keep them upright as much as possible. And then I got 3 sets of bikes. For all the reasons I mentioned before. Again, just a great unit for how much they cost, and they punch pretty hard. So that brings this list to 9 activations and 800 points, right? So more than likely, you probably aren't going to win the bid on this one, so you're probably going to be playing your opponent's command hand, but maybe if you both tied 800, you're at the mercy of a roll-off to figure out whose command deck do you go with. For the command cards on this one, again, going to look pretty familiar. Gunner Infantry, Drive Them Out, Pin Down, assault, constantly alert, and standing orders. Again, aims and suppressive for the major, and aims and standbys with constantly alert. Objectives, bombing run, breakthrough, key positions, and intercept the transmissions. I did IP with this one because I do have, you know, a lot of scouts, and again, those scouts, again, with that range 2, I mean, you're going to be close to your opponent to attack them anyways, so why not go for something like key positions where you're scoring, or I'm sorry, intercept the transmissions where you're scoring in rounds 2, 4, and 6. I mean, you're going to have to be pressing the issue a little bit anyways, and then you can just kind of come up on them with the major as well as those bikes for kind of like your linebackers or whatnot. So that's why that one's in there. Deployment, major offensive, danger close, disarray, and rollout. You know, disarray is kind of cool with the bikes. Maybe kind of set your opponent on off ease, you know, because you're deploying to those different quarters, and again, those bikes can move pretty quick. So if you get rapid reinforcements, you could drop another one over there. Just something to think about, just to kind of maybe throw your opponent off their game. And of course, rollout again gives you that extra scout mobility because all vehicles get scout 2. So now you're looking at scout 3. Conditions, I touched on this with rapid reinforcements, fortified positions, clear conditions, and hostile environment. All the reasons we talked about before, so I'm not going to you know, labor on that one any further, but I think that all makes sense. And finally, again, I would be remiss if we didn't have this list in here because it is unique to this Battle Force, but I call this the shoot 'em off the table list because I'm bringing 3 ATSTs, which of course just suck up so many points. So you're not going to have a lot of hands or things like that to do claims or, you know, pick things up, drop things, repair things, whatever it is. But this goal list is obviously hitting that W key, moving forward, and just shooting your opponent off the table. So taking the majors, the commander, and then we're taking 2 ATSTs, Hammer's Elite for that surge to hit, the Twin Light Blaster for the range 4, and then one of them has the LTA while the other one doesn't. Same reason as before, we just want to use the direct command that we're getting from the major to hand out the order token as well as give them an aim. And you're talking about an impressive amount of wounds here between the 3 of them. You know, with my high school math, that's 33 wounds that your opponent's got to get through to get all these off the table, or 33 crits. So I mean, it can be pretty interesting to put all 3 of those units on the tabletop and see what your opponent's reaction might be. For there, I do have the Stormtroopers, both units with the RT-97C as well as the Specialist. We've got plenty of impact, obviously, coming from the ATST, so this is all about just throwing as many dice as I can at an opponent. So the RT-97C is 1 red, 3 white, and of course I'm using that Specialist to give me some aim tokens. And then I do have to have the Scout Troopers, so I got 2 in there. Similar to before, I gave them duck and cover, again, just to try to keep them on the table as long as possible, give them that suppression, you know, maybe kick in low profile or whatnot, just to make sure that, you know, again, rolling white defense dice, surge to block, they can get pretty squishy. But that brings this list to 7 activations and 799 points. From command cards, we've got Gunner Infantry, Drive Them Out, Pin Down, Squadron on Me, Constantly Alert, and Armored Cavalry making an appearance. Again, this is just all about vehicle control with those command cards to control when you move those 3 ATSTs or when you move the major and the 2 ATSTs, right? So aims for the major, free aims, moves, and potentially dodges for the other 2 with Armored Cavalry, depending on, a lot of those cards depend on where you are within the major's arc. So you want to be mindful of that, of how you move all 3 of those ATSTs to make sure you're optimizing your green tokens. But it's all about making sure that you're getting maximum efficiency out of, you know, those really expensive units, 190, 180, and like 170 or something like that for each of those ATSTs. Objectives, going to look very familiar: bombing run, breakthrough, key positions, and payload. I think that's pretty self-explanatory of, you know, again, moving those 3 ATSTs across the board. Deployments, danger close, long march, major offensive, and rollout. I mean, scout 3 on 3 ATSTs. I mean, you can be right in the grill of your opponent, or within at least that range 4 for all the double rainbow that the ATST throws. And then conditions, fortified positions, hostile environment, limited visibility, only because depending on maybe what objective comes up, again, you only have so many hands, and the scouts only have range 2. And the storms are, they're not the greatest units either. So if you have something where you need to keep to claim, I felt like putting limited viz in there, depending on the objective, just to keep them up, right? Just to keep them up. And then War Weary, again, since I'm dealing with so many vehicles in this list, obviously vehicles don't suffer from suppression. Maybe that's something, again, that plays in your hand and against your opponent, because they got to worry about suppression more, because if they're not touching terrain or something like that, they're not going to be able to take those tokens off. But that's the triple ATST list. It's pretty much a must-have in these lists. Again, I've played this one a few times with mixed results. It's fun to play, but if you're more into the competitive Legion space, I'm not sure this is something that you could have success with, or just maybe you're a better player than I am and you can. I don't know. So thoughts on that, post them in the comments down below. But with that, that's our closing list for Tempest Force and how you can play them. Different thoughts with a gunline, or kind of a gunline with the vehicles, or just going straight heavy with the 3 ATSTs. Let me know your thoughts. Post them in the comments down below on these lists. Or hey, if you've been playing Tempest Force, what lists have you been using? The gunline list actually came from a reader, and I kind of tweaked it a little bit as well. So I know folks are out there using it. So let's see what you got. But until the next video, hail to the Empire.